Okay, as promised, 5 minutes is 5 minutes, so we'll get started. I want to welcome everybody to our OTI training center here at Cal State Dominguez Hills. I want to obviously welcome our director here, Raul, who's in the back and always involved along with our training staff here. I'm going to take a quick oath here really quick before we get started, and this oath is for this camera to focus in on me, and also to tell you that at the end when we give you a raffle, it is a legitimate raffle and it's not hand-picked already. So that's my oath for you. Is the camera focused on me here? All right, we're good? Perfect. All right, good. So I want to first and foremost welcome you here. My name is Alex Gazalpour. I'm very privileged and very honored to be a part of this training center. I started here 11 years ago when Raul started here. So we kind of started together here. My primary focus here when it comes to the classes that I teach are our 511 classes, train-the-trainer classes, some familiar faces in the room. If not, hopefully I'll see a familiar face in one of the classes here in the future. As we begin, lots going on today with some great presentation that we have and a guest appearance from OSHA as well. So Fed OSHA, right? The big wig that handles everything. I'll introduce you momentarily, which means that our contact hours have to be here till 2 o'clock at minimum. I was going to let you out earlier, but now we can't. So we'll start with that. So that tells you how my classes run. All right. So before we start here, I want to kind of bring your attention to what we have. Thank you for the smile. I got many more jokes for the rest of the afternoon for you as well too. So as we go on here, you're able to log in through a QR code. So that's our QR code here that you can get in. How are our controls? We're working out good, Giselle. We're doing okay there. Perfect. And let me go in the appropriate direction here, PowerPoint wise for you. So as I welcome you to our training center, we do have a plethora of certificate programs that we offer here for you. This is almost a sales pitch for you as well too. We have OSHA number classes, specialty classes, hazardous waste, train-the-trainer. It's one of those training centers where I truly feel, and I'm not biased because I'm here teaching for it, I truly feel is hands down one of the best, and best practices are set through this training facility. We endured the COVID pandemic. COVID will be talked about many times over, and we adjusted to what the needs were. Just because of COVID, OSHA regulations, Cal OSHA regulations, and a variety of things didn't stop, right? So education needed to continue. 10 and 30-hour sessions needed to be there. Education needed to be there. So we were able to persevere and push through that through not just our side, but our audiovisual team, our IT team, the support staff that this OTI has, in order to push through to be able to continue to put these classes up there. I don't think we've skipped a beat whatsoever, and we've continued to put classes through, and we have not brought any of our classes to a pause or a stop. So that is me. It's probably one of my best photos you'll ever find. I will sign them at the end of the class for you if you like that photo and you want to put it anywhere in your office. I am the president and founder of a medical company called Shield Telehealth Medical Services. It caters to the correctional health facility where we deal with correctional health, DUIs, medical care for arrestees, Narcan, naloxone training for law enforcement and for first responders and thus forth. I am also a current sitting police chief in Kern County for a small city by the name of Arvin, just southeast of Bakersfield. So I've been there. Going on 14 years, never envisioned taking the top spot. Very privileged to be able to do it because climate and culture equals change. And that big T word that's out there in every profession, transparency, is what I truly believe about. And we push forward. So that's what I do. My area is a specialty here, as I mentioned to your general industry, healthcare and train-the-trainer. Like I said, I love being a part of this facility. I come here and moderate, as much as possible, as much as they'll allow me until I screw it up. So, but it's coming, I promise you. All right, so using Zoom and QA controls for our folks who are there on Zoom, if you go down to the QA section there, question and answer, that's what it stands for. You click on that, right? It'll open up a web page, open up a small page for you, type your question in there. We'll make sure that we answer your questions. I think we're doing a question and answer session during, or you want to do it all at the end?
Both.
Both. Perfect. So both. So hammer him with questions on the first slide, see how he handles it. Until he says we're going to take all questions at the end. Perfect. All right. As we continue on, that's our Zoom control here. There is a chat aspect that's available for our folks that are online. I think it's a great thing to have. And at the end of the day, you know, as I say, this industry is an industry. It's not necessarily what you know, it's who you know as well too. So when I look in the room and I look at you, by the way, love the shirt. I'm going to go buy one. Right. I look at you, I say, hey, let's talk about fashion afterwards. Right. Or let's talk about general industry. It's that direct connect that we have. When I look at the state compensation insurance fund people, I say, hey, that's great. Let's talk afterwards because my insurance rates are a little high. No, it's a communication piece that we have, right? So it's this industry is great, regardless of whether you're a competitor in a business, right? You're competing against each other from one construction company to another. The information sharing when it comes to taking care of people and making sure they're safe when they come to work, right? There should be no barriers to it whatsoever. There should be no dollar amount put to it whatsoever. There should be that information, best practices spread all across the board. As I continue, this is what our agenda is for today. So obviously the welcome we've done. I also want to bring into note in this collaborative partnership that we have with ASSP, the American Society of Safety Professionals, right out of the Long Beach branch. They're always great about getting us snacks and water and food. I've asked for Perrier. Any representatives from that organization here? All right, you keep failing, but we'll work on that moving forward. All right, we will have the Trent Safety Stand Down session. That will be led by Greg. I'll introduce him here momentarily to you. And then we'll have our Q&A session. How are you? And then, not to call attention to you whatsoever, welcome. And then our wrap-up session as well too. But prior to doing that, I wanted to bring to attention, I'm going to look at your business card because we met the first time. So Derek Engard. So Mr. Engard is going to come up here momentarily and speak to you. So he is from OSHA, and I'll have him briefly introduce himself and tell you all the fantastic things that are forthcoming. Here you go, sir.
Thank you. I almost wore my Friday Hawaiian shirt, but I figured I better not. I'm representing OSHA today. And I got to drive back to San Diego. So if we leave a little early, I'm good with that. I won't say anything. I just want to thank the Ed Center, all the folks that are putting this on together. I really do appreciate it. This is an important event, you know, besides fall protection. I mean, these two things, fall protection and trenching, probably the most dangerous thing we do in construction. And unfortunately, we're still killing folks, right? And I want to thank you all for taking the time to be here, right? That's why we're here. It's an important event. I just appreciate it. And if anybody has any questions afterwards, I'll give you my business card and we can chat. Thank you.
Eric, thank you very much. And thank you for being here and your commitment to obviously these programs as well too. We just had a sidebar conversation. It looks like Derek is not just handling San Diego, handling LA, Kern, all the way up to Sacramento. So let's see if we can write some letters for you and get you some help if you'd like, right? We can petition that. Perfect. All right. So as we go here, some of the facts that I want to cover for you with our training center, as I briefly mentioned before, are as follows, right? So we have more than 50 different courses that we offer you here, right? So you have a book here with a training schedule. We have 2 OSHA certificate programs, 6 Cal State University Dominguez Hills certificate programs as well too. Most of the centers that we have are assigned to higher education institutions as well too, with 26 centers throughout this country. So a lot of opportunity there for you to advance in. And then this is all obviously done under OSHA's Office of Training and Education, right? That's spearheaded. So everything that we do, we run through them, right? So they bless it, they approve it, and we roll and we go move forward with it and get things done. Obviously, our national network of nonprofit organizations are there as well too, that are authorized by OSHA to deliver these occupational safety and health programs. So it's not just a, hey, come in here, let's give you a couple of things, let's throw a couple of slides up there for you. It's a commitment. And if you commit to one of these certificate programs, I've committed to a bunch of the certificate programs here. I sat in this classroom here back in 2008, 2009, taking these classes going, hey, I really love the vibe, really love what's going on. How can I be a part of teaching? So, and that was one of my fortes, and I've been very blessed to do that afterwards. As I mentioned earlier, our ASSP, American Society of Safety Professionals, a partnership that we have, supports our occupational safety and health professionals. The Long Beach branch, you can look them up at this website here, longbeach.assp.org. And again, if we have any members, Perrier next time, right? At least one for the moderator, it works out perfect. All right, without further ado, I want to introduce our guest speaker for the day. So Gregory Sharon is the director of the training for TSU, Trent Shoring University. So I cracked a joke. I said, hey, can I get a master's out of it? And he looked at me, he said, one day you will, right? He's a senior shoring consultant. Then I went and asked for a GED. He said, one day you will too. So I didn't understand where that came from. He is an NACSA training committee chair, a OTIC instructor here as well too. So as a part of our instructor pool, you've been here for 5 years now teaching. So in his area of specialty, obviously is trenching and excavations. So without further ado, I'd like to open it up and have you take this over. And there's your clicker. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. As he said, I've been here for about 5 years. One of the things that strikes me about what we do here and what Raul's done here with the OSHA Training Institute, he talked about, which is people who care. So in construction, one of the best things about construction, I feel, and working in this business now for over 20 years, is that people care about actually making sure that people go home at the end of the day. So just kind of a roundabout way, how I came up with this presentation that I'm going to give to you was, you guys all remember COVID. So we all went through COVID and we all remember what that was like. And for the first time in many years, maybe 15 years that I had been training, my schedule all of a sudden became completely free. I mean, there was nothing there. Every single training class that I had booked, and we trained about 3,000 people a year. So all of a sudden that all vanished. So we were kind of sitting around trying to figure out what to do. And then it became obvious that we had to get online. And so what you see here and all of you people online, that COVID actually gave birth to that. I mean, it was kind of looked at, almost frowned upon actually as training, good awareness training, but not really given any credibility as far as, hardcore training. But COVID brought all of that out. So if you could take a silver lining from COVID, that would be it. The fact that people figured out better ways of doing things. And so now here we are, and we have hybrid classes. So I'll be teaching next week. We have an OSHA 3015 class next week. And we'll have people here in the room like we have here today. And then we have people online as well.
I just wanted to share that since you're talking about that, there's right now 175 people connected through Zoom.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you. All right, well, let's get started. I'm going backwards, so let's not do that. All right. So as I said, I put this training program together during COVID when I had time to sit around and kind of think about what did I want to put out there for people that would be helpful. We all go through training. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, it can be really dry, right? So after doing this for, at the time, about 17 years, I've kind of come up with some ideas about what works, what doesn't work, what people can do, and what becomes problematic for people. Because we train and we work with people in the classroom, and then I would go out in the field and look and see what's going on job sites, right? And I would talk to people and ask people, so, we talked about this in class. How is it going out here? People say, well, so what did we talk about again? And I would say, well, remember, we're supposed to have shoring in the trench, or we're supposed to be doing this, you're supposed to be doing that. And they're like, yeah, well, we don't do that here. In the classroom, everything's great, but in the field, all of a sudden that stuff disappears. So that kind of became the driving factor for me, is how can we take training and actually, while we're talking about it in class, but relate it to what's going on in the field, so that when you come out of a classroom and you come out of competent person training, you're actually going to do something about it, right? We're actually going to go into the field. In fact, one of the questions I had at one of the safety meetings that I did, and I speak a lot of times in a lot of different places, and I was at the AGC, Association of General Contractors, and I was speaking to a group of safety professionals. So these were all safety managers from about 60 different companies. And I was looking at the sign-in sheet, and I had trained probably 80% of these companies in the past. So I'm standing in front of all these safety people in the room, 60 different companies. And I asked them this question. I said, when you send people to training and you pay good money to send people to training, to a training class, what do you ask them when they come back? Do you actually sit down with them and say, hey, so what did you learn? Like, So what are you going to bring to our company out in the field? Like, what is it we're going to do to get better with this stuff? And not a single person raised their hand. Like nobody, like I could just see it in their eyes. They're like, wow, you're right. I mean, maybe that's something we should be doing. So this whole idea about getting trained so that we can what? Check off a box? Did that? I mean, that needs to go away. Right? And that's kind of been our mission. My mission as director of Trench Shoring University is how can we take the training from the classroom into the field? So one of the things that we do is we try to reach out to companies that we're training with and offer assistance after we train. You know, can we see how this stuff is actually going to stick in the field? So we do a lot of consulting that way, and we have our own ways of doing it at trench shoring. But I also got to say, you know, there's other shoring companies that do that as well. Shoring companies, this is what we do. We try to reach out and to support what people are doing in the field. I highly recommend you find a good shoring consultant, whether it's with Trench Shoring Company or any of the others out there, that you find somebody who can help your company. And that's kind of a backdrop to what we're going to do here as I go through this. One of the fundamental things, if you're using shoring equipment and you're working underground, is to involve a professional. Because it's not just that one guy or gal that you're going to bring in, but all the people that they work with and the combined knowledge from their companies that you're going to have access to. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. Yet I see people don't take advantage of that, and they should, because it's free. I mean, that's a great thing, right? Free. I mean, who wouldn't do that? So I push it all the time, but let's talk about here. So what we're going to start with today is how to make yourself 10 feet tall and bulletproof. It's not hard to set your jobs up so that you're compliant. In fact, compliance is what the whole standard is all about. I mean, if you read through the excavation standard, it tells you pretty much what you need to do out there. The thing is that people don't read it. You know, many times I'll be in class and I'll go through something. I'll say, have you ever seen this? Well, how many times have you guys been trained? 1, 2, 3 times. I've been trained every 2 years, every 3 years. I've never seen that. Like, how is that? How does that happen? Right? These are basic things. So I wanted to give people confidence, right? Good training. When you leave good training, you should feel like, wow, I can do this. Not like this. A deer in the headlights, right? I've just been hit with so much information, I don't even know which way's up now. Like, I don't even know where to start. Good training when you leave should give you a good feeling about moving forward, saying, hey, I can actually get this done. And not only can we get it done right, but now we have a wealth of information to draw from, because this shoring company, these guys that we work with here, they actually will send people down to help us for the stuff that we don't know about, right? So let's see what we have here. Just a quick disclaimer. This presentation is yours. I put it out there in public domain so anybody can use it. All that we ask is that you use it to better your situation, and you don't obviously try to profit from it or get it out there and try to train from it, take it and use it as training that you're going to go make money from. But we put it out here for everybody to have some things that you have to put down, you know, legally. This free webinar PDF is for discussion purposes only and is designed to generate thought, action, and attention to the excavation standard. It's not an opinion, a dissertation, or even advice. You as leaders and workers are responsible for establishing safety on your jobs. No webinar or even competent person training can or should be held responsible for any outcome as a result of you viewing this material. It is purely informational and designed to challenge thought processes and raise awareness. One of the things that I say in my training all the time is when people will ask me questions, and I'll say, well, what is your answer? In other words, how are you going to answer the question that's being asked of you of how are you going to keep somebody safe? Because that's your job. Because people want to know that that expectation is being met. And as we'll see in this training, that expectation is the OSHA Act of 1970, which says that all employees shall have a safe place to work. So that is the mission of OSHA, and that is what we're supposed to be doing, is providing a safe place for employees to work. The unfortunate thing about that is safe is an awful big word that means an awful lot of things to a lot of people. So how can we come up with what is safe? Because we got all these different opinions. Compliance. Because if you're compliant and we're doing with what the standard says, that stuff all pretty much takes care of itself. So let's see and figure out how we can do that. So how to make yourself 10 feet tall and bulletproof. Master the fundamentals of compliance on the job site. A well-trained and competent person, competent and confident. How to develop a repeatable system. Integrate the front end, estimating, bidding with reality of subpart P compliance. This is a big one. How do we bring the front office into the field? Many times what I see is that people in the field get thrown under the bus because they're the ones that are supposed to figure all this stuff out. Well, if they don't have the equipment they need and they can't get it in a timely fashion and everything waits to the last minute, well, guess what they're going to do? They're just going to figure it out and do whatever it takes to move the work forward. Should never be surprised when that happens because that's what they do and that's what they're paid to do is get work done. They don't like to sit around and do nothing. It costs a lot of money that happens. So what we need to do is make sure that when the work's being bid and the work's being set up, that the people who are doing that understand what compliance is so that they're putting down a track for people to run on that they can get the work done in a timely fashion because guys in the field are all about production. So if you want production, then get together with the front office and make sure the work is coming in such a way that we can do it and be compliant in the field. So that's a big one we like to talk about. And then wash, rinse, repeat. Every day is practice. Every day you can improve. I always say this, that every day is practice. We had one situation where a customer called me after training and I had been there about a month previous. He said, I don't know how to tell you this, but we had somebody in a job across the street, fell off her roof and broke his back. And OSHA came out because there was an investigation. And since we were there with the excavators and we were digging, they investigated it. You know what the really cool thing was? They came out to our job site. They said they were here because they were across the street. So they came out with an impromptu investigation. By the way, there's still, as far as I know, a national emphasis program going on. So OSHA doesn't have to have a reason to show up on your job. If they're in the area and they see work going on, chances are they're going to be there because, as Derek said, we're killing way too many people. Right? So they showed up. He said, Greg, do you know that just because you kind of went through the step-by-step process that OSHA takes when they show up, that we were kind of prepared for that? And, you know, we weren't perfect or anything, but we passed with flying colors. And he said, it's just so nice to feel like we had all our ducks in a row. And that's what we're after. What we're after is that if you're comfortable on a job site, meaning if I go up to you and I'm going to ask you about trenching and excavation work, and I just ask you some simple questions like, what'd you classify the soil as? Who's your competent person? Can I see the tabulated data for your equipment? I just want to make sure that everything's in order here. You're not freaking out, right? You're like, sure, no problem. How are you doing? What's your name, sir? Derek? Yeah, Derek. Would you like some water? You know, all of a sudden we have human beings treating each other kindly and nicely and everything goes well and everybody's happy. Well, that's what happens when you're prepared. And you know that everything is the way it should be on your job. So what do you have to be afraid of? Somebody shows up and they start asking questions. See, what happens is the natural reaction is to recoil from that and think, oh my gosh, you know, they're going to find something. They're out here and you got paranoid and everything goes wrong. We've all been through situations like that. So hopefully good training, you get good training, puts you in a feeling like, you know, that's not going to happen out here because we know what we're doing. So what I start with, I don't know, back in the day, you guys might remember Letterman, right? And the top 10, we all love top 10. So, you know, I'm old, so sorry if nobody knows David Letterman, who that is or what that is. So I'm kind of dating myself there, but top 10 of the things that I see that people struggle with out there trying to do this. And I thought it would be helpful to approach it this way. So number 1, or number 10, we'll start at 10 and go to number 1. No T1 excavation permit. So in the state of California, in order to excavate below 5 feet, and I'll talk about below 5 feet here in a second, you have to have what's called a T1 excavation permit. To get that permit, you're going to have to submit your IIPP, your Injury and Illness Prevention Program, and you're going to have to show proof of a class like the one we teach, the one I teach, a competent person training class. And usually, I don't think it's policy, but usually they're going to ask you a few questions. Now, here's how that goes down sometimes, because I have people come to me all the time and they take my class and I'll ask, I always ask people like, what do you do? And the guy said, well, we're putting a basement in. I said, oh, I know why you're here. And he'll say, really? I said, yeah, because you went to put this basement in, you got to dig in the ground, and they asked you for your T1 excavation permit. You didn't have it. So now you're here because you got to take the class. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So you're going to learn a lot here today. But here's what happens to people. They don't have their IAPP. In fact, what's an IP? I don't know what an IP is. Like, people don't even know, they don't have the first clue sometimes. Don't go to OSHA. Here's the tip number one. Don't show up at an OSHA office with this bundle of paper that you've downloaded from the internet, that you've got a Word document from and went in and changed a bunch of the stuff to include your information. If you're going to do something like that, I highly recommend you remove the words property of UCLA. Okay? Before you submit that to a compliance officer and they laugh in your face and they start asking you some really weird questions like, how do you calibrate a pocket penetrometer? The guy came to me and he said, why is OSHA asking me that question? I said, I don't know. Let me see your IIPP. Because they know you don't know what you're doing. So this last minute kind of hurry up, let's shove something in their face and hope that we get through. Please don't do that. You're going to waste your time, their time, everybody's time. You got to do it right. You got to have this. Now, what about if it's less than 5 feet? Let's talk about that for a minute. So here's a great story. So guy calls me up and he says, Greg, I'm a cement guy and we're only cutting 2 to 3 feet deep most of the time. And the GC that I'm working for, he keeps bugging me for a T1 excavation permit. I don't have to have it. He said, do you know where I can find that information? And I said, okay, so what do you want to do? You want to go in? You want to print that in? You want to print that information out so you can do what? So you can hand it to him and say, see, I told you I was right. Well, yeah, sure, I can do that. I'll print out the information. You go up to that guy. You tell him, look, pal, here. Okay, now, I'm right, you're wrong. He said, yeah. I said, does that feel good to you? How does that feel? Well, I don't know. I said, does that guy sign your checks? Is he the one that's bringing you in there? Is he giving you work? Yeah. Do you want more work? Yeah. Well, maybe he's going to give you more work that's going to be deeper than 5 feet. And he'd like for you to have it. How about that? I never thought about that. Yeah, maybe that's it. Look, if you're digging out there, you're scratching around, you're digging a couple of 3 feet, go get the permit. Okay? You're going to need it at some point. It's good information. It's $100. Still $100? Derek's like, don't ask me. It's $100 for an annual permit. Okay, $100. You should have your IAPP. It's required in the state of California. It's a good thing to have. Call us if you need help. I deal with kind of stuff like that all the time. Right? No T1 excavation permit. The other thing I'm going to say is that for all of you subs out there who are working, if anybody within earshot and listening to this, get that permit. At some point, you're going to be asked for it. Plumbers, probably the ones who struggle with the most. What happens if you work for any cities, counties, or whatever, when you get the inspector to sign off on that work, they won't sign off on it. You'll be all done, ready to go. Wow, this is cool, we're done. And then the guy will say this, okay, ready to sign off, but just show me a copy of your T1 excavation permit and I'll sign off on it. I'm like, what? Oh my gosh, everything stops. Then you got to come up with that IAPP. You got to go take a class. I mean, you're talking weeks. You know how many phone calls I get? Can you do it for me tomorrow? Yeah, one class, one person, I'm going to do it for you. Yeah, $2,500. I'll do the class for you tomorrow. Really? 25? No. I feel bad for people like that, right? I try to help people out, but this is what happened. All right, number 9. Daily trench inspections done, but not documented. So I got to have a really good conversation with Scott Ketchum. You must know Scott. So because I work with NACSA, North American Excavation Shoring Association, I'm the training committee chairperson there. Doesn't mean a whole lot right now. I was honored to take that position from two people who I consider legends in the shoring industry. But what we're really trying to do at NACSA is figure out how we can best serve the industry as a whole. So we're part of the safety committee now. But the cool thing is I get to talk to Scott and I got to sit down with him. I asked him this very question because it's one that comes up in training all the time. You see, in the OSHA technical manual, it says document all of your inspections. OSHA will not or cannot cite you for not having something written down because the standard says you have to inspect. It doesn't say you have to write it down, but it says you have to inspect. Let's talk about that. So here's the dynamics that how that plays out. So you're the competent person, you inspect, and hopefully when you inspect the trench with like, we'll call it hydraulic shores, right? So with hydraulic jacks, you pump up and you put pressure in the cylinders and they hold up the trench wall. Well, how do you inspect something? Most people, this is what they do. They call that an inspection. That's not really an inspection, folks. What happens with hydraulics is sometimes they will leak. Sometimes they will, the ground moves, especially if you have plates and traffic driving over it all night long. So that stuff shakes loose. So what we can do is take the removal hook and just grab onto the top hook. They have hooks on the top of the shores and just kind of yank up on them and see if they're in there solid. Now, if you don't have a removal tool, you can take a shovel and bang on them or a 2x4. But just go through and check a certain percentage of them, whatever makes sense, okay? But do something other than just, you know, you got to do a little more than that, right? So this is how we kind of, you know, we inspect things, but here's the, so what happens if we don't write it down? Inspector comes. So, hi, my name is Greg. I work for OSHA, and you know, after I go through a certain amount of questions, I'm going to ask you for daily inspection reports. Or was the excavation inspected? Yeah, we inspected it. You have anything for me to look at? No, we don't do that. Oh, okay. Well, the requirement says we have to inspect. So do you mind if I talk to, I don't know, every single one of your employees out here about it? Because that's what I'm going to do. And if nobody saw you do it, guess what? You didn't do it, right? Because it's called hearsay. Hearsay means just because you said something, unless I can verify that, didn't happen. So is it better to write it down? And this is what Scott told me. He said, would your contractors rather hand me a piece of paper that shows what they did or have me talk to all their employees? What do you think the best answer? Yeah, okay, great. You gave me something I can teach in my class, right? So people like to say, it's not required by OSHA, you know. I'll say, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. Yes, Kathy.
Hi, Greg. I have a question from Josue. Do you have to do daily inspections for small excavations, for instance, trench to install a sprinkle line?
So when you have irrigation line and irrigation work, okay, so the question always is somebody going to get involved with that, right? So there's a couple of ways, the reasons people inspect. Obviously, you have pipeline integrity, and that always has to be inspected, and people will inspect to make sure that everything is installed in such a way that it's going to work, okay? And it's going to be according to the pipe manufacturer. But any day that you're going to put somebody in an excavation, that has to be inspected before somebody enters. So inspection's a great question because inspections should be done when? Daily, prior to work, after a rainstorm or other hazard increasing event, okay, or anything else that could potentially change the dynamics of that. Those things could be weather, they could be, again, water from rain, or it could be a runoff from a water main break or something like that. So anything that's changed the dynamics of that trench would require you to go back in and double check it if it happened during the day. But other than that, it's before people enter. Does that help? Hopefully that helps. Anything else, Kathy? Okay, thanks. So the great thing about a checklist and an inspection sheet is that if you do it right, and by the way, this one here, I love this one, okay? So when I put our training program together, so we started off with NUCA. So NUCA's out there, they're nationwide, they're great. That's how we all started at trench shoring. We have our own program now, but this is the most plagiarized document on the planet. I'm going to tell you right now. I've been teaching this stuff for over 18 years now. And this is the same thing that I see everywhere. And it's on the internet and everybody has it. And it's fairly generic and it's bland. I recommend that you put something together. It's, Microsoft Word, you have forms and it's really easy to do. Because if I could do it, anybody can do it. And you set it up for your company, And when you set it up right, here's one of the biggest mistakes that people make with these kind of forms. If you have type B soil, okay, so most everything in California is C soil, probably 70–80% of what we deal with is C soil. In the event you had B soil and you want to use B soil, they're going to ask you, what test did you use to determine that you had B soil? Now, if you put those tests right here on your document where somebody could just circle one of them, they'd be a lot more apt to actually do the test, right? And then when I went up and did an audit and I asked them, what kind of test did you use? Because I see you have benching out here, so you must have C soil or B soil. And they'll say, yeah, what B soil? Well, what kind of test did you use? I did that squishy thing. Oh my gosh. You're not a competent person, obviously. Or I did the worm thingy, or I did the thumb thingy. The thumb thingy, okay, most everybody, this is the answer that they give me. What kind of test you do? I did that thumb thing. Great. We got a lot of work to do here. No wonder OSHA people, kind of roll their eyes sometimes because competent, right? The word competent means you actually know what you're doing, right? Don't get me started about that. But one of the things that we teach in the class is how to even talk about this stuff, right? We have soil, we have material, we have trenches, we have excavations. We don't have ditches and we don't have dirt, okay? Because why? If you've been trained and you know how to deal with this, then you also know how to talk about it. So we talk about those kinds of things in class. Why? Because people are looking to you for guidance. Can you imagine going into a dentist's office and you sit down and he opens up your mouth and he's got a flashlight and a fork and he's looking in your mouth and prying around. He's like, what is that little beggar back there? What is that? Oh, yeah. Look at that thing. There's a big hole in it right there. What do they call that thing? Is it a bicuspid or is it I'm not sure what they call it, but obviously you're not going to be real happy about something like that. When we're competent and we're professionals in the field, then we need to demonstrate that. And to demonstrate that means that we're talking about what this stuff says and how it relates to what we're doing. So having an excavation checklist, it helps employees understand what it is they're supposed to be doing out there. When you don't have anything like that, then people are just going to do what they do. Like I always tell you, like on a job site, people are doing this. Say jump over trenches because they're trying to get somewhere. If you don't set up a passageway for people to walk through your job site, they're going to go wherever. They're going to be like, I'll go here, the other guy will go there. But if we set up a way to travel that's safe, then everybody will go that way. But it's something that you actually have to do. So daily trench inspection, not done at all. Okay, there's the guys who say we did it, and then there's the people who are just honest and say, no, we don't do it. Yeah, we don't do that, which is a big no-no. Why? Because obviously there's a reason for that. When studies are done on fatalities, here's what they discover. They discover usually that these main things aren't done. Number one, they usually don't use any shoring. If there's no competent person on site, then nobody's doing any kind of inspection, so nobody's looking at things, right? So there's generally not a whole lot of training that goes on when there's no inspections being done. So that's number 8. Number 7, job site crews not prepared to handle a surprise visit by OSHA compliant. So here's I don't have many stories, right? So an owner calls me and he says, can you believe this happened to me? And I'll say, well, at this point in my career, I could believe just about anything because I get a lot of phone calls like yours. So what happened? Well, compliance officer came to my job site and he started talking to my employees. And these are the questions that they asked. He pointed to the trench and he said, have people been in there? They said, yeah, people have been in there. And I said, well, how deep was the trench? He said, about 8 feet. I said, how wide was it? He said, 4 to 5 feet or so. I said, okay. He said, but here's the thing. While people were in there, we had shoring in there. We had ladders in there, we had shoring in there, and people were in there. And everybody left. We took out the shoring and we left the ladder. So here's the problem. They asked the question, has anybody been in there? Well, they told the truth. Yeah, people have been in there, but there was shoring in there while they were in there. So here's the guy, he's looking at the trench and there's a bunch of footprints all over it. People have obviously been in there and there's a ladder in there. Now he's going to make some assumptions, or she's going to make some assumptions. Well, now the guy's in a pickle because he's trying to say that didn't happen. Compliance officer's just out there doing his job, writing down what he's looking at, and just making a report. Same thing you or I or anybody would do. Don't set yourself up for problems. So here's some tips. Don't put ladders in unshored excavations. Okay, so when you have trenches, you put the shoring in first, then you put your ladders in. If you take your shoring out, you take the ladders out. If you allow access or you show access, then the assumption is that people are going in there. Take away the assumption. Just common sense. You have to think about this stuff. Stephen Covey calls begin with the end in mind. What's the end? We want to keep our job site compliant. Okay? I'm here to tell you, I talk about OSHA all the time, not because they're a boogeyman, because they give us a baseline of what our minimum behavior should be. And that's just minimum behavior, folks. These are minimum standards. Okay, so Derek will tell you, it's not like they've got a million compliance officers running around. They don't. And people tell me this all the time, like, Greg, I don't know what you're talking about. Not seen a single one of those guys in the last 15 years. And I said, yeah. And here's how that works too. Only ripe fruit falls from the tree. Okay. That means you're about due. Okay. Why do I say that? I say that not because OSHA has some kind of waiting list or anything. I say that because just the way things work. If you're that complacent on a job where nobody's bothered to look at what you're doing for years, and let's say you're doing work where you don't have any oversight. Nobody's looking at what you're doing. I'll guarantee you that you're running pretty far outside of the lines of compliance. It's the people who have oversight. Do you know that? What is it? I believe, and I'm not going to be probably 100% right, but pretty close to 3 out of 4 fatalities in construction happen in residential. Why is that? It's because you have home builders and developers, okay, who don't have safety departments versus general contractors, commercial work. Commercial work, you have the general. And I mean that both literally and figuratively. The general, the guy who's in charge of everything, I'm the general. I have rank, I'm in charge of everybody else, I have oversight. We work with a lot of general contractors, commercial general contractors, genuinely concerned with how their subs are performing. So they watch, they have oversight, and they're trained. So they're going to pull people out of a trench if they're not putting shoring in correctly, or if they're not doing it at all. They're not going to allow it to happen. Residential work, not 100%, but for the most part, you don't have that kind of dynamic out in the field. And that's where a lot of that happens, right? Production. Okay, so being prepared to handle a compliance visit means a couple of things. Let me just talk about it. Number one, the most important thing you have to remember when we're dealing with regulations, to get the people part right. How do you get the people part right? We're human beings, folks. We're just out here doing a job. Okay? Treat people with dignity and respect. Everybody, even compliance officers, yes. Of course. How do you think that's going to go for you if you treat them with disdain? We get what we give, right? So number one, get the people part right. Now, how do we get the people part right? as I said before, if you're comfortable in your skin about what you're doing out there in the field, you know you're compliant, you're doing everything you can. Nobody's perfect. Okay. People say to me, Greg, if OSHA wants to find a violation out there on any job, they can find it. 100% true. Nobody's perfect. I guarantee you they're not out there to do that. They don't go out there to do it. Now, if you piss them off to no end, yeah, they might. Why? Because they're human and that's what humans do. So if you want to put your boot up somebody's rear end, so to speak, well, don't be surprised if you get one back. So if you don't want that kind of thing, then treat people with dignity and respect. Now, I know Derek would say, look, we don't retaliate, we don't do all that. To be completely politically correct, obviously that's not the case. But the point I'm trying to make is valid, which is when we're working out there, nobody's going to come and try to, as my buddy Bob Barrett would say, you know, pick the fly crap out of the pepper on your job site if you don't give them a reason to. Okay, they're out there to do a job and make sure people are going to be safe. So if people are comfortable with what they're doing on a job, then you're going to be comfortable talking to anybody about it. So every day I say is practice, right? So you can go and look at your job as a competent person and say, hey, we're compliant. OSHA shows up. Sir, how can I help you? Would you like to take a look around? We've been working really hard in case you showed up and now you're here. Come on, let's go take a look. Compliance officer would be like, never mind, it's okay. I'm going to go somewhere else, right? Then you would shock him or her. Thank goodness you're here. Imagine ever getting something like that? But yet every day's practice. So what else do you have to do out there? I mean, it's not like your foreman are doing anything that's really complicated, right? Of course. And that's the hard part. Okay, the hard part is the competent person is not somebody who's sitting there in a chair with an umbrella. He's usually the foreman, the operator, and they're kind of busy usually, right? So this is why we train a good cross section of people. I get a lot of people in my classes who are not competent persons, but they can help. So the more eyes you have on things like your ladders and your spoil piles and things like that, then it's not just a competent person who has to deal with all this stuff. So the secret to being prepared is that you work into practice every day. Okay? Because as a coaches will always tell us when we played sports, and all of you who guys played sports, you play in a game like you what? You practice. So that was beat into me when I played football and baseball that the game is gonna be no different than practice. So you better give it all to practice. This stuff is important. Yes, sir. We have a question.
Yes, there's a question online. It says, I'm going to read it and maybe clarify it. It says, but the regulations says that after 4 feet, you need a ladder, not a shoring. Shoring after 5 feet, right?
Yes, of course. That's exactly what it says. But it also says that at 5 feet deep, you need sloping, shoring, or shielding if there's no indication of a potential for a cave-in. Okay. One of the things that's missed in shoring, just overall, is this word potential. I and many other people like me who are up here doing all this training and scratch our heads after we see things like about 3 or 4 years ago, we had 39 fatalities across the United States. And most of these people are the kind of people who look at things and they say, it's less than 5 feet, therefore it's not dangerous. What does the depth have to do with how dangerous? A competent person is somebody who is trained to eliminate hazards. A hazard, something that is capable of causing injury, illness, or death. I could be on my knees in a trench that's 24 to 30 inches wide, that's 3 feet deep, and be in trouble. Sea soil that's granular has a tendency to move. Vibration in the ground, it can move all the time. A cubic foot of soil weighs between 90 and 140 pounds. A cubic yard is almost 3,000 pounds. People don't understand. I spent a good hour and a half of my class trying to help people understand what happens when that much soil, that much weight moves against a human body. It's not pretty. Being able to identify a hazard means that you can look at a situation. A trench is a natural caught between situation. You're literally climbing into a pinch point. Not to mention struck by. What are the 4 most common accidents in construction? Focus 4, struck by, caught between, falls, and electrocution. So a trench is 3 of them, if not 4 if you have electricity in there, but 3 of them. So this idea that somehow you don't have to provide any shoring if it's less than 5 feet is a false one. And you can go to 1926 651 J1, which says all employees must be protected from loose rock or soil from falling from the face of an excavation. That has no depth limit on it. It simply says that if you're exposed to loose rock and soil on the side of a trench wall and it's falling down on people, then you are out of compliance. Now, that doesn't have anything to do with how deep it is. And by the way, when I ask somebody, well, how did you make it safe? Well, it's only 4.5 feet deep. And the answer to my question is, so the fact that it's 4.5 feet deep, that means it's safe. Well, yeah, OSHA says 5 feet or greater. They don't see the rest of it. Potential, indication. Let me ask you a question. Right? You see a scorpion on the ground and you reach down and you pick it up. What's it going to do? It's going to sting you. Why? Well, because that's what scorpions do, my friend. You pick up a scorpion, it's going to sting you. What does type C granular soil do when it's just sitting there unsupported and vertical walls? At some point, it's going to fall because that's what the ground does. That's just what it does. Here's the question. When is that going to happen? All of the geniuses out there who think they know that are the ones who come and say, I can't believe this happened. Right? Now I want you to think about something here for a minute. The most valuable possession you have, the most valuable thing that you think is worth so much. Okay. Could it be your 85-inch flat screen? I got a 75-inch in my bedroom. I think that's pretty valuable. Now, if I took that thing and I put it in a trench, okay, what would I do to protect it? You know, I got loose rock and soil. I mean, it could just hit the screen and crack it or, you know, so I'm going to spend all of this time to make sure that that thing is protected. Yeah, how much more is a human life worth? I mean, it's infinite. Think about that for a minute, right? We spend all this time coming up for these reasons why we're not going to do something. Maybe we should be thinking more reasons why we are going to do something. Maybe that's a better way to go about it. To finish answering the question, and I know this is what you get with me. Like, wait a minute, I just asked this little question and we get this big answer. 4 feet deep for ladder. That's access and egress. So ladder, ramp, or stairs at 4 feet. Yes. Shoring as needed. What is the definition of a competent person? Someone who is capable of eliminating hazards in existing and predictable work that are hazardous, dangerous to employees. Eliminating hazards. It doesn't say, I only need to do work if it's less than 5 feet. Is there a hazard, yes or no? Okay, is the ground loose? Yes. If you don't understand that, and we need to spend more time with showing you soils mechanics. Great one to come to the class. Isn't that the name of our class, our old 3015 class? It's soils mechanics is a big part of that. We talk about soils a lot. Type C granular soil, it moves. How long did you say this was? 4 hours? Number 6, the soil is not properly classified. 2018, about, what's that, 6 years ago now? Holy cow, time goes by so fast. We had a fatality here in South Orange County. And won't go into the details of it. They weren't fined egregiously. In fact, I think the upshot of the whole thing was there was a lot of confusion on the job. But it was a slope job. And one whole side of this slope caved in and killed an individual. And the ground was loose. And it was sloped at 1-to-1, which is too steep for how that ground was set up. Now, there were a lot of things that went into that. Was it a residential job once again? But classifying soil is vital. I was on a job up by Magic Mountain doing a class, and I was asking him, so what did you classify the soil as out here? Now, I usually know, I have a good idea, and I get trained by a lawyer. We have one of the best lawyers in the country. His name will escape me now that I'm going to say it. He works for Snell and Whitmer. Chuck Keller. He teaches us about the law and how that works. And when you look at how soils are classified and how things are done, and I forget where I was even going with this, but it'll hit me in a minute. But in looking at that particular situation and talking to people about it, people like to say that the soils tech company, so whether it's Nino and Moore or Kleinfelder, or there's many of them out there who are geotech companies who classify soil. And going back to Magic Mountain there, and I'm asking him that question, and here's back to where the lawyer comes in. And me, I don't ever ask a question I don't already know the answer to. So I'm asking a question about the soil just because I want to see kind of how they're wired. And here's another tip, by the way. If you want to learn things, ask questions. I found that trying to tell people things doesn't work. But asking questions and generating an opportunity for information to come forward works so much better than trying to tell everybody everything. What am I? I don't know everything. The only reason I know anything is because I've been doing this so long, and with people like you, right? So all you're doing is regurgitating all the information that people are giving you. So it's not mine. So we share it. So when we're sharing information, I think one of the most important things is, and I want to get off topic here, but remember to create the opportunity for something really cool to happen. And I think that's what we try to do in our training, is create an opportunity for people to engage, figure out how they're going to take this information and move it forward. And all we are, if you're standing up in the front of a room like me, is just a facilitator. You're just somebody who's going to help create an environment where you have an awesome conversation and people walk away and they go, wow, that was amazing, right? But it wasn't amazing because of me or you or any one person. It's called us. What a great thing, right? There's a whole nother entity out there, and it's the collective hearts and minds of everybody in the room, which is really cool. We have online stuff now where you really can amplify that if you get something good going. In a world, don't get me started here, but in a world that just seems to be divided everywhere, why not take the opportunity to bring people together somehow? Anytime you get a chance to do that, right? So this is what we try to do. Now, going out there on that job and asking these kind of questions, I'm not going to accuse anybody of anything. I'm just going to ask questions. So I ask questions. So what did you classify the soil as? Well, the soil text says it's B soil. And I kind of scratched my head because I'm at Magic Mountain. Desert, kind of sand, B soil, like, wow, where are they getting this? B soil, by the way, is mainly clay. Okay, mainly. I mean, think of glue, B soil, clay, that kind of holds everything together. So here we are, like Magic Mountain, it's B soil. And I said, well, first of all, soil techs can't classify a soil for you. Can't do that. What do you mean? I mean, they know a lot more information than we do. Yeah, well, here's the problem. What if things change? First of all, and the second part of that is, do you understand how soils analysis is done? They'll take samples here, there, wherever. That could have nothing to do with where you're at. Okay, so they might be valid or they might not, but as a competent person responsible for those people in that excavation, you have to do that. Okay? And it's not rocket science. Okay? It's not meant to be. We classify soil so we have some idea how the soil is going to behave, and we can choose the right shoring because the shoring is all set up according to the soil type. So we have to know the soil type first, which means somebody's got to be educated enough and actually do this work, okay, actually do it. Like, for instance, with B soil, like I told you, I did that squishy thing. Like, you're not doing anything. So we show people how to do that. But so I asked him that question. or I tell them this, we kind of go over it in class and they're saying, wow, well, we didn't know that. Which is amazing to me because I'm working with this big general engineering contractor, and don't be surprised, you know, when you think people should know things and they don't. So anyway, I said, oh, would you want me to do it? Sorry, I'm gonna step over here for a second. The water. Okay. So we're gonna do a soil test. Can you tell that I have fun? Yes, Kathy, do you have a question?
Yes, Ingrid said, how long in advance the soil should be tested before starting the job?
That's a great question. Wow, this is really cool. I love really good questions. So not like I'm the authority on the subject or anything, but let's talk about that. How long should we test the soil, or how long in between the time we test it, the job starts? Well, here's what usually happens. Okay, so you bid the work, you get the work, you're trying to figure out. So we'll get a call as a shoring company, we get a job, and we will look at a soils report. And if we're bidding work, two things, when I got soils reports, here's what I looked at. You got 40, 60 pages, however it is, blah, blah, blah. This has happened, 3,000 years ago. There's a river running through it, this and that. Okay, fine. I want to see what the soil is every couple of feet. So they'll tell you in bore logs what that is. And then they'll show you where groundwater's at and where bedrock is at. And those are the kind of things we're looking for. So I just flip through all that and go there and there. Groundwater, what's in the ground. And so we'll shoot for the lowest common denominator as far as shoring if we got to bid something. So most of the time we're looking at, something around sea soil, and we'll bid it that way. But then as far as the contractor goes, most likely if they can, what they'll do is they'll go out and they'll do some potholing or some excavating to see what they're looking at. Okay, so you'll have some idea. But as far as when do we actually do that as a competent person? Well, the day you go out there and start digging, right? Because you're going to dig and you're going to put people in. So if you're out there and they're digging, let's say you dig one day and then you don't go in until the next day. Well, if I'm a competent person, I'd like to be out there while they're digging. Why? Because I want to see how the soil is behaving while they're digging. So while they're digging, you're looking at the sidewalls of the trenches to see if they're going to hold up, right? To see if they're moving, to see if you've got sand pockets, layered soils, whatever it is, just to see and look and think, right? How is this going to affect how we're doing? Think about it. Shoring is an art, okay? It's an art because we look at so many different aspects of what's happening. We like to talk about it like, well, what are we going to need? Okay, well, let's talk about it. First of all, how much are you going to open up and work with at a time? You're going to open up, well, we've got 3.5 miles of underground to do. Okay, you're going to open up 3.5 miles of trench all at one time? Of course not. Nobody does that. Some companies will open up, a mile, but they'll put 200 guys on it. I mean, that's really fun. Is a shoring company to deal with people like that? Really? So how much shoring do you have out there? I don't know, 4,000 shores, 600 shields, 4,000 or 5,000 plates. Cha-ching. I mean, we like stuff to hear like that. Does that happen very much? Not very much. Okay. So a lot goes into that. What kind of machines do you have? Are you working with backhoes? You're working with excavators, right? How much access do we have? What about traffic control? I mean, there's just a million things. I could bring up the whole day. We could talk about the decisions that you're making out there with respect to how are we going to do this work. But as far as soils analysis, that's a daily thing. Okay, you're looking at it every single day. Why? Because as soon as you open up the ground, the earth wants to cover it back in, right? Things are drying. We're coming into summer right now. So you're looking at the sides of the trench walls, they're drying out. What happens when things dry out? They start sloughing off. So when you're thinking about what you're going to do, then you're thinking about, well, how long is this thing going to be open? Are we coming in and closing the same day? Is this going to be open 3 days, 4 days, 2 weeks? What you put in the excavation, in your trench, whatever, has a lot to do with how long that thing is going to stay open. How long do you need it to be stable for? Here's some other things to consider. A shield in the ground does not support trench walls, right? A shield just is there as a barrier. It doesn't provide positive support against a trench wall. So if you're in the street, okay, and you've got plates over a shield. And so you work during the day and you put plates at night, traffic. Well, you could have some serious situations with asphalt in the street over time if that's going to be left open for a while, if you're just putting a shield in there. That's why many times we'll do things like slide rail, or people are put heavy duty shoring in there because you're going to have to put positive pressure on the walls. That's a difference between working with an outfit or working with an entity, a shoring company that has knowledge and experience versus showing up at a rental house and saying, I need a bunch of shores. Can you hand them to me? Yes, put them on a truck and go put them in yourself. Okay, that's the kind of knowledge that you get when you're working with experienced professionals because they can see into the future, right? Because we already know what that looks like. If you just leave it alone, how that's going to end up. So in properly classifying the soil, I think probably the biggest mistake that people make is if I ask you, what test did you use for B soil? You need to have a valid answer. And it can't be, well, look at it. Okay, I'm looking at it. Well, it's brown. Yeah, most of the soil is brown. Well, I know, but it's B soil brown. Okay. Anything else? Well, yeah, it's standing up just fine. I didn't ask you if it was standing up. I asked you what test you did. Oh, well, yeah, I did that thumb thing. Right, like I believe you. So there it is. It's the same thing I say in my class. Can you imagine yourself talking to a compliance officer and feeding him this kind of stuff? No wonder people get in trouble. Stuff like that. Just do it. Okay? I mean, people's lives depend on it. So we give you tests to do. That's the long and the short. When I talk about soils properly classified, if you just do it, if I can figure it out, anybody can do it. Like I went to Cal Poly Pomona. I was going to be an engineer, structural, like my dad. I thought, wow, I'm going to be a structuralist. No. If you've ever taken that test, and my dad took him 5 times to take that test before he finally passed it. I ended up being a shoring guy, and now I'm doing this. You know why? I started reading. Didn't work in college. I didn't last very long. But when I got it, I've always loved to read. And so when I started working with contractors, I started seeing the kind of situations they got themselves into. So I would read up, like, how does this happen? Like, what does the standard say? Now I go back to him. I said, do you see this right here? This is what you got to do. Oh, wow, I've never seen that. Like, wow, and you're a contractor? I mean, do you understand this? If you have an A contractor's license, all of you guys out here who own a company, you are bound legally to do this stuff, okay? This is the law, right? You don't get to decide like, well, it looks safe to me. Really, why? Oh, because I've been doing this 20 years and I'm here to tell you it's safe. Okay, but it doesn't work here in compliance though. That's safety stuff, come on. Yes, ma'am.
I have 2 questions. Is there a separate category for engineered soil or is considered type A? And that's from Julia. And then what is considered class A soil?
Very good. So all of you class A soil people out there, all of you who've taken the OSHA 30, this is my big argument about the OSHA 30. So this is my complaint. I'm officially lodging it with Mr. Derek Engard. I took the OSHA 30 and 80% of the material in that book for that class is all about A soil, which Cal OSHA basically says the ground's moving out here all the time. Earthquakes, right? We're in earthquake city. So there generally is no type A soil out there because no soil is type A if it's fissured or cracked or subject to vibration. And the standard says such as pile driving or other heavy vibration. But when I ask OSHA to define that, they just kind of look at me like, how do you define something like that? So if there's vibration in the ground, essentially, we're not going to have A soil. Here's what I teach in my class about A soil to answer that directly. Unless you've got Metropolitan Water District, Caltrans, the city of LA, some high-powered entity behind you with a bunch of engineering that says so, in the state of California, I would stay away from A soil altogether. It just doesn't work out very well. And now if you want to do that, you're perfectly fine to do that if you think you can do it. It doesn't work out well in the way things work. And that's a total just, this is the way the industry is, okay? I don't have people having a lot of success. I've had 4 people in my trainings over the years who were cited for improper soil classification, all A soil people, okay, saying they were cited because there was vibration on the job and they tried to say it was A soil, even though they removed all of the equipment off their job. What happens is, generally with A soil people, they won't have shoring in there. So the whole idea is we can somehow get away from shoring. And then what happens is other people take pictures of their job site and then they call OSHA and OSHA comes out. And generally that doesn't end well. Okay, so this has been my experience and that's all I can give you with respect to that. I would say most people stay away from all. If you get from A soil, if you get an engineer involved, you have soil techs and everything, then I would evaluate that situation very carefully. Now, as far as engineered soil, that's an interesting question. I've only dealt with engineered soil one time, and that was with aqueducts and dams for LADWP. That engineered soil was some pretty serious stuff. So I would say that that's an engineer's question. It's not one I can really answer because it depends on what the engineered soil is. Engineered soil is a generic term, and it could be a lot of things. People call slurry engineered soil. But an engineered soil is engineered according to some specification out there that would have to be documented. Okay, so with an engineered soil, an engineered field, that's all engineers stamping stuff and saying this is the way it is. Okay, and that's fine. They're going to put their reputation, their everything behind that on an engineered job. And they can draw up drawings and they can slope accordingly, according to the engineering stuff that they've planned out. That's kind of how all of this stuff works. In other words, we have engineering that goes for tabulated data for your equipment. When you're sloping sea soil, for instance, at 1.5 to 1 or 1 to 1, that's called maximum allowable slope. That's basically where the soil stops moving. So if you literally just dumped it in a pile, that's where the ground would stop moving. So all these things are based in engineering. So it would make sense that an engineered soil would work for that. Here's what we see in the industry. You have big general engineering companies, Kiewit, Granite, Skanska, LADWP, even where they're doing their own work, who will have engineers on staff who will design things and stamp them, and it's all done in-house. I've seen all kinds of crazy stuff done there. I really can't comment on that. If they have the engineering to back it up, I think is probably Derek would agree that, you know, Caltrans will stand, OSHA would stand behind that. Caltrans, for instance, just to pick an entity out of the sky, they will evaluate it. So what happens in situations like that is that you have structural engineers generally on staff who will take a look at the numbers. So they're going to look at the calculations and everything else, and they'll either sign off on it or not. Or if you're going through the city of LA, it'll go through building and safety, and they'll decide whether or not they're going to approve something. So usually when you encounter something like engineered soil, it's because you got a bunch of engineers and they all got together and they say, this is okay. As a competent person, you're going to have to sign off on something like that. So this is how I always tell people, look, I'm going to do my own investigation. And if I got an issue with it, I'm going to call the engineer and ask him to come down and have questions. But that's the strength of a competent person. And sometimes what I call engineering centric companies who live and die by engineering, and that's everything that matters, they kind of toss aside this idea of a competent person to the point where the competent person doesn't feel like they have the right to even question anything. I'm here to tell you that's not the way to go. Why? Because a competent person is there now with the crew. So your engineers out there, I'm sure most engineers, they don't have a problem with somebody asking them to come down and look at something. If you have valid questions, okay, I'm talking about if you've got valid issues. But that's a great question. And it's only come up once in all my training. Second time. I think we're good. Number 5, there's tabulated data on site for the shoring equipment, but nobody's read it. Wonder why that is. So how many of you have read tabulated data? Raise your hand in this room. All my shoring guys, all my trench shoring guys. All right. What company are you with? Murray. Oh, I got Murray here? That's because Warren. Good to have you guys here. Why do you think more people don't read it? Okay, so they don't have it. Why don't they have it? It's online, it's available to anybody. Why don't they have it?
They know what it is. They don't know how to read it.
Don't know how to read it? Don't know where to find it? All valid, perfect, good answers. Okay, let's talk about it for a minute. This is our tabulated data, so it's 34 pages, 35 pages, something like that, 38 pages. Okay. If it's just a little, this many pages, this big, you know, but you go online, I guess they're bigger if you just download it 8.5 by 11, it's online. Any company, not just trench shoring, but most, I think all companies now, they have tabulated data online. But what does that mean to a guy who's, you know, just offloaded all the shores off the truck? He's getting ready to put them in the trench. So is he going to have it? So these are all valid questions. We live in a world now where everything's going digital. People are coming up with ideas of putting, you know, laser QR codes on trench shields, or even talked about putting them on shores and things like that, where you can just scan with your phone. But then you go out and you're up in the hills somewhere and you got no phones, right? So we keep coming, we're having this discussion right now at Trench Shoring Company internally. Like, how can we make sure this stuff gets to everybody? You know what happened with COVID? Here's something that happened with COVID. So we came up with these really cool tools to measure a slope. Warren was a big benefactor of that, one of our friends here at Snyder Langston. And he was asking for them all the time because guys really liked them. They would put them in the slope and you could see the angle of the slope. So I had some for C soil and B soil and A soil. They cost us $2 each. $2 each. We had some really cool information on them and we printed like 2,000 of them and they went like that. Now that was something we were willing to do. We spent the money, we gave those out. We went back to get more. I was going to get 10,000 of them. After COVID, you know what the guy told us? No problem. We'd love to do that for you. Just a kind of an increase in price though. You know, you understand COVID and everything, right? Sure. What I'm thinking 20, 30%, 40%. We went from $2 each to $20 each. $20. $20 for one. It's just paper. And I won't even tell you what I said to the individual because I can't repeat it. Just robbery, right? And so this is what happens. So now we're dealing with the same thing when you go to print out, you know, these pamphlets. I'm not sure what the price. I think they were $1 a piece when we started doing. I think they're probably closer to $5 a piece now, right? And the thing with being a manufacturer of shoring and handing that stuff out blindly to people, it becomes a huge expense. But yet it still has to be done. So I know that we're in the process of printing a bunch of them, but we're also trying to figure out, like, how do we get this information into the hands of people who need it consistently? Okay, because people won't, we always try to, we train our desk people, ask, do you have the tabulated data? Do you need a copy of it? Oh, I don't know, you know, maybe, yeah, I guess, or yeah, no, just send it. Okay, so we'll do that. And let's say you order 25 times, 10 shores, 15 shores, 5 shores, whatever. We're going to send out 25 copies of tabulated data. At some point, it gets to be a little bit wasteful, right? So these are some of the things that they're struggling with. But having said that, what we're trying to do from our standpoint, I can tell you, I don't know about everybody else, but I know that our reps are always working with their customers, making sure they have the information. So one of the standard questions always will be, do you guys have all the information? Do you have your tab data? Do you have that out on site? OSHA's going to want to see that. If they show up, they're going to want to make sure it's on site. All anybody ever has to do, if you're out there working on a site and you don't have the tab data, you don't have time to look it up, get it yourself, call your rep. Say, I need tab data out here. And they'll get it out there. I guarantee. Okay. I think the other thing is people don't understand the value of reading it. Yeah, Kathy.
Nicholas said some shoring have tabulated data on their site. Is that considered info and is approved or accepted by OSHA or Cal OSHA?
So some companies, can you repeat the question?
Yes, some shoring have tabulated data on their sites. Is that considered information and is it accepted by OSHA or Cal OSHA?
Okay, so you have to have the tabulated data for the shoring equipment that you have on site. Okay, has to be on site. Raul?
I was gonna add to that we want to see a registered engineer stamp on that.
Oh, he was giving me a high sign. I didn't know what he meant. Like rock, paper, scissors, like, what are you doing? I'm sorry, I just keep it real. I know you could be broadcasting this live on television. I'm still gonna be the same person. So it really doesn't matter. I just always straight up. So thank you for that, Raul. It's not tabulated. So great thing that he was trying to say right there. So what Raul was trying to say is, look, you may have information there about your shoring. You could have a brochure. You know, there's brochures out there that talk about the shoring, and even that it'll give you dimensions and stuff. We have information like that. Tabulated data is the engineer's stamp. Okay, so it has to have an engineer stamp on it for it to be valid, right? And that's going to tell you, because here's the thing, when they design equipment to go in a trench, right, it's all designed for how much load it's going to carry. So it's going to give you depth and width rating. That's the whole reason it's there, right? Is to help you understand what the capabilities are. So those things are only going to go so deep and so wide. So that's all engineered. And that's an engineered system, by the way. And this is one of the things that I say all the time in training. And one of my things is, you know, as a trainer, you always come up with your specific things that you focus on. With me, engineering keeps people safe, not opinions. Okay, not opinions. I don't care how many years you've been doing this. I think you're 30, 40 years, it doesn't matter. Because I've had people who I've had to sit down with who have put people in a wheelchair for the rest of their lives, tell me why they did something. And when I go through it, and I go through it step by step with them before they're going to talk with OSHA, and I said, well, what basis did you have for doing it that way? And he said, well, we've been doing it that way for like 20 years and we haven't had a problem. And I said, is that what you're going to say to OSHA? He said, well, that's kind of why you're here. I mean, we kind of want to know. And I said, well, here's what OSHA's going to tell you. They're going to say, well, then it took you 20 years to figure out how to put him in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. Because if you don't have any engineering to back up what you say, then it's just your opinion, which means nothing. It sure doesn't mean anything to that guy. Because he don't care how many years this has worked. It didn't work that time. So we can't do things that work until they don't. Right? So engineers, what does an engineer do? Engineers, they take into consideration all that stuff. How much pressure is in the ground based on how deep, velocity, movement, soil composition, all that stuff. And they back it up with an engineer stamp because they're registered in the state as a professional engineer, which means they have certain things they have to abide by, right? We don't just go to anybody and have them draw something up. It's a registered professional engineer. My father, I told you, was an engineer. When I closed his business down, errors and omissions, that's the insurance. Backs up an engineer, just like malpractice insurance for doctors. So engineers carry errors and omissions. He had been a registered structural engineer for roughly, I think, 25 years. He was at CE for 38 years total. $6,700 a month is what he was paid. Now, he's very high profile, expert witness, testified in court, all of these things, senior engineer. But gee, that's a lot of money to protect himself against liability. And so that's how important that is, right? That's an engineer's stamp. I mean, they're putting literally a lot of money behind that stamp to say, if you do this, you're not going to have a problem. Wow, okay, I'm going to do that. My opinion, gee, that doesn't mean anything. So my job as a competent person then is to always be looking for this stamp right here. I'm trying to figure out how to protect human beings. Nothing more important on the planet, by the way, right? That's what we're using. Okay, because other than that, we call it field engineering. And all you guys who work in the field, we all know what that means. See jury rig, see Mickey Mouse, see whatever you want to call it. Okay, we call it field engineering. Sounds more important that way. but it really is just figuring out how to do stuff on the fly. Now, I don't mean to downplay that because there are plenty of things that guys in the field do that make people safe all the time that aren't necessarily compliant. Like, I don't feel unsafe with a lot of things that I see. The problem is that we don't live in that world. We live in a world full of employees and employees in a workplace environment, and around us hovering and flying all over the place, there's these animals with great wings, and they're always looking down for opportunities, and they're called vultures? No, lawyers. Yeah, that's right, lawyers. Okay. And that's what's driven a lot of this. We live in a very litigious society, don't we? Okay. So companies, big part of my training is called protect the house. And protect the house means you like where you work? And every day what we're doing when we go out there is protecting the house. Okay. Because what we're doing is making sure that there's no action ever going to come against the place that we work for. Trench shoring, we talk about it all the time. I changed my driving habits so that we can protect our house. And it's not an easy transition. I'm here to tell you. I argue, we whine about stuff like that all the time. But I'm doing it because I believe that it's important. So it's not always easy to make these kind of changes, especially when work processes, the way we do the work in the field. And you go through a training and you start getting the idea that, yeah, you know what? This isn't, we have no way to do this and show compliance. But this is how we've been getting work for years. I mean, this is how we could beat the other guys. But we can't do it and be compliant. And so that becomes a real, what we call a rice bowl issue, right? That's our rice bowl. This is how we make our money. And so there's some real thought that has to go into how we're getting work based on what compliance is. And until you start really looking at compliance, you're not going to come up against that. And then some wiseacre like me will show up and teach your people about compliance, and then everybody will start asking questions. And then you're thinking, geez, did I really want to have that guy show up and say all that stuff? Right? So I always warn people, like, I'm going to tell you what compliance is when I come to your job site and I come and teach your people. You may not like it, okay? But I'm going to tell you why. Because if you're a trainer like me, my signature goes on that certificate that may or may not hang on the wall. But even more than that, a lot of guys take that wallet card and they put it in their wallet right next to their rear end, right? And if my name is riding around right there, that means I got your rear end covered. And so I do training for individual people, okay? That means I'm behind you. That means you're going to know exactly what you're getting yourself into if you're going to be a competent person. You're going to know what your responsibilities are. You're going to understand the weight of the law when it comes or it can come against you. There are competent persons who've gone to jail. Not very often. Most of the time, the company is going to be dealing with that. But one of the guys in Connecticut, they just went to jail. You know what he said when they asked him? He said, they asked him, there was a trench cave-in twice before the third one happened. Caved in twice. You had trench shields out there. My gosh, man, why didn't you put the shield in the ground? You know what he said? I don't know. I guess we just play the odds. And the guy died. He went to jail. Now, I don't know if it was that statement that got him there, but that kind of attitude, I think both of us, all of us would agree that that's kind of where he needs to spend some time thinking about stuff like that, right? So in my mind, it's always going to be the same way. You always got to need to know why this is important and what it is that you're there to do. Okay? And I'm always going to train people that way. Number 4, sloped or bench excavation is not done in accordance with Appendix D. Well, this is how people die. You have to remember that when you're sloping or benching, it's a protective system. Okay? You're not just out there scratching around in the dirt. It's done a particular way because that's the way it has been proven to keep people safe. Now, if you need 32 feet wide to make something compliant, and you've only got 26, then you're 6 feet off. And I use this as an example. So let's say you're 6 feet off. So that's 3 feet on either side. I don't know how that steepens the angle from a 45 that you need to something steeper, or from a 34 degree to something steeper. But here's the thing. If you know you need 32 feet, because that's where the ground stops moving, and then you step over that line, how do you determine when you step over the line? How much you step over the line? I mean, it's just random decision all the time. Do you realize that you're randomly playing with people's lives? Do you realize what you're doing? Right? I get it. I understand the mentality behind it. But compliance tells us that if we do things a certain way, people will be safe. Now, how do these people know that? Like, what makes them so special? And you see the movie Groundhog Day? There's a part of the movie because it just keeps repeating itself, right? And Bill Murray, he's kind of learned his lesson because he keeps doing the same day over and 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 over again. You'd think you'd learn, right? So eventually he does learn some really important life lessons. But at one point he's sitting down and stuffing his face full of all kinds of crud, cakes and drinking and whatever he wants to do, because he's like, I'm not going to die. So I can do whatever I want. So he's doing all this stuff. And then he says, maybe God is just God. Like, he knows so much because he's been around so long. I really thought about that. It's like, that makes a lot of sense, Like, if you're around long enough, you start to see, I'm 60. Now, a lot of us trench have been together for a long time. And I don't approach things the same way at 60 as I did 20 years ago. I'm still here, so I guess I'm doing something right. But I've learned a lot. Some of the things that I've learned tell me that time has a way of purifying. Okay? Who's been around longer than OSHA? Looking at all this data, year after year after year after year after year. They have NIOSH doing investigations year after year after year after year after year after year. I think they have a pretty good way of doing things. And I'm kind of a salesman, so I sell it, if you look at my wife, you'll know I'm a good salesman because she's still with me 30 years this year. Now, that's a pretty good sales job. Thank you. I guess the point I'm trying to make here is that there's nobody who has a better idea about this stuff than OSHA. Those things are there for a reason. Man, if we learn to follow those things, we're not going to have all of these fatalities. NAXA, our mission at NAXA, North American Excavation Soaring Association, is to do what? No fatalities, none. Can you imagine? No fatalities due to cave-in, none, zero, zip, nada. Pretty lofty goal. What is that from the movie Miracle? Miracle. That movie about Herb Brooks and the hockey team when we beat Russia? Nobody thought in the world thought Russia could be beat. And he's sitting there at the table with all these guys and he says, well, I think we can beat them. And the guy's like, pretty lofty goal, Herb. You're going to beat the Russian team who won like 19 straight gold medals or whatever it was. I believe, maybe just stupid enough to believe, that we could do it. That we really could have a year where we had zero fatalities due to cave-in across the United States. Maybe that's why I'm the training committee chairperson, right? Look at that guy. He won't shut up and he's dumb enough to think stuff like that. So yeah, you go, dude, right? You go. I do. I get excited about this stuff because I believe in the human spirit. So I believe that when people care, that this stuff can get done. I really do. And there's nothing better than what OSHA has if we will just follow it. So they give us examples of how to do things, but people don't do it. Okay? They just don't do it. They have better ideas. Now, if you have better ideas, that's fine. Just make sure there's a stamp next to it. Okay? Right? There's a better idea. Let's put a stamp next to it. There's all kinds of things that can be done when we get engineers involved. We do it all the time at trench shoring. We have C60 soil. That's a different kind of sea soil than OSHA. OSHA only allows us to play with you know, sugar sand, essentially, OSHA sea soil. But all of us people who use shoring, we know of a kind of sea soil called C60, or sea soil that will stand long enough for you to put shoring in. So we can take that to an engineer and they can come up with some different things, because here's part of the problem with stuff like this, or your standard seashore slope or your sea soil sloping, is that the pipeline manufacturers want vertical sides when we put pipes in, pipeline integrity, right? And that kind of flies in the face of some of the stuff that we have here for sloping and benching. So when we get engineers involved, we come up with some really cool stuff. And the Murray guys are all nodding their head. They know. They've been doing this stuff a long time and they're still here. That's why. Because they figured it out. People get mad at me sometimes. I had a guy stand up in the room and throw his glasses at me because I was saying some things about less than 5 feet. And he said, well, if we believe everything you say, I mean, we'll just board this place up because we're not going to make any money because we can't do our work. Aside from dodging the glasses, I just said, well, other people do it. Other people do it. Let's show you how. There's always an answer. It can always get done. I know it can be frustrating for people sometimes. Ladders and spoil piles are not managed so they're compliant with the standard. You know, this is just one I really believe of. It's a tough thing to do. People climbing up and down ladders all the time. So they don't set them back where they stick up 3 feet out of the ground. You know, kind of one of the things that I talk about in training is there's 3 things, if you're a competent person, that you need to think about. 1, what I see. So here's a little exercise. Think about doing it. So when you come back from lunch sometime, you get yourself away from the job and you come back. What you're going to do inside your head is you're going to play OSHA compliance officer. So this is one way that you can kind of look at your job, take yourself out of what you're doing. And right now, I'm going to try and find violations on my own job. So I come back from lunch. So what do I see? Do I see ladder sticking up 3 feet? We all know that it's 4 rungs on a ladder, essentially. The 4th one being even with the ground. That's basically how you can tell. So it's easy to spot when your ladders are out of whack. Okay. Do I see anybody that's roughly more than 25 feet away from a ladder? All right. Your ladders can't be any more than 25 feet away from it. Do I have trenches out there that are deeper than 4 feet that people are in with no ladders? All right. Do I have spoil piles that are not set back a minimum of 2 feet? Are my spoil piles running to the edge all the time? Do I have spoil piles that are 10 feet tall at 2 feet back? Another thing that people do. You know, OSHA will just basically take that tape measure and they go, say, okay, we have people here in an excavation that is 10 feet deep. I'm sorry, sir, that's 4 feet deep. No, that's 10 feet deep. Right? That's how that works. So what we see, what's the next thing? What I hear. So if I'm going to go talk to you, I don't want to hear things like squishy things. What did you classify the soil as? I don't want to hear things like, well, it's basalt, I think. Excuse me? See, OSHA is going to ask questions. And let's just say those questions are round in nature. So the answers I give them, I want them to be round. So think round hole, round peg, round hole. Now, if they've got round hole and you've got square pegs and you try to give them square pegs for their round holes, it doesn't work. So what are they asking? How'd you classify the soil? I want to hear type C or type B. I don't want to hear basalt. I don't want to hear it's sandy, it's loamy, it's whatever. I want to hear a soil type. So your people should know how to respond to something like that. Right? If I ask you basic questions, I want answers that I am looking for. I'm not asking you questions because I don't know. I already know. I want to know if you know. So this is what your people on job sites, they should be able to answer these questions without any difficulty at all. One of the exercises I do in class is that I just sit down and talk to somebody. I'll do it here. Sir, what's your name? John. You work for McCarthy? Great. John, what do you do for them? You're a safety man? Wow. So where are you working right now? A lot of work. San Diego branch. Cool. Well, thanks. Did you get nervous at any time I just talked to you like that? Didn't seem like it. Very relaxed. Nonplussed. Well, gee, that's how a conversation should be. Anytime anybody wants to know anything about your job, right? Shouldn't be nervous, shouldn't be defensive, shouldn't be irritated, shouldn't be any of that stuff. So if people are that way, then you're not there yet. You're not there yet. So this is what we're talking about. Somebody once told me that confidence is like a steel hand and a velvet glove, where people sense from you that everything's okay here. But on the surface, you're not like this. You're very kind, you're pliable, you're even will admit when you make mistakes, right? Because you know down deep, you're doing everything you can to make this stuff work, right? And so when you do things like that and you have that kind of thing on your job site, you don't run into a lot of the problems that people have who are doing the fight or flight thing, right? Fight or flight. Like, I'm either going to stand up and give you all kinds of grief, or I'm going to disappear. And it's not like OSHA's never seen that, right? When they show up on a job and like, where'd everybody go? That's got to be hilarious. I can't even imagine. I'm sure Derek has tons of stories about stuff like that. All right. So that's two things so far, what I see and what I'm hearing. Last thing, what I'm reading. You have your daily inspection reports. So one of the things that happened to me when I was out in the field, because I'm a shoring field guy, that's how I started. I always like going in the field and looking at things. So I go out to a job site one day and I show up and they got our shields out there and they're putting our shields together, and the shield has 23-foot long spreaders. I'm like, oh my gosh, 23-foot long spreaders. So they got so when you do this, so they put the shield panel on the ground, then they take the spreaders, which are the cross members, right? And these are 5x5, 5-inch by 5-inch square. They put them here. They go down to the end of the shield and they put them there. And so they got these things sticking up in the air like this. What are you going to do with that? Then they picked up the shield panel with guys on top of it, 4-way rigged, and then move it over with an excavator and try to stab those things. They got guys down there like this. And I just like, this is a dumpster fire times 10. Okay, so I'm moving away. I want to be near something like this. And then I'm watching a car come down the road. This is in Point Loma. And I just sat there and it was kind of beige cream colored and it had some look to it. And I've seen that kind of vehicle before. And sure enough, it was a gal named Kim Lee Lindgren. Now, Kim Lee lives in Point Loma, and she is a Cal OSHA, was at the time, not anymore, a Cal OSHA compliance officer. Very famous one. It's an amazing sense of humor, a smile with razor blades. And she shows up. Y'all want to come down? Oh my gosh, I sat and watched that thing just get worse and worse in my truck. And they shut the whole job down. And I thought to myself, I don't know how people get themselves into situations like this, but it usually is a lack of training, lack of understanding, lack of just about everything. But one of the things she asked for when she came, got them all down and everything, and she said, "Do you guys have any kind of paperwork here at all for anything you're doing?" No. See, I didn't think so. And that's how she was. She's like, yeah, I didn't think so. But anyway, she got all done writing them up and red tagged the whole thing and sent them all packing on her way, just shut the whole job down, right? So I got to chatting with her afterwards. And I said, so give me one thing. I'm a trainer. So I just started training. I've been training like 2 or 3 years. I said, give me one thing that can help my class, right? Things that you see out there that are just constantly like in your head. She said, oh yeah, that's not a problem. Here's one of my favorite. And she took a little whiteboard. She held a whiteboard, a clipboard was like a whiteboard, and she drew on it. And she said, when people hand me daily inspection reports, so she drew these little boxes, like your checkoff boxes. Okay, so they'll have questions and then yes or no, yes or no, yes or no. And then she drew a straight line through them. She said, when I see paperwork that looks like this with straight lines drawn through it, we all know what it's called. It's called pencil whipping, right? It means that people are just going, like not really doing anything. She said, then I know that there's all kinds of things here for me to look at. So I thought, okay, that's something I want to include in my class, which means your pencil, your paperwork needs to be real. Okay? It needs to be real. If I'm looking at it, if anybody's looking at it, it represents your work. It represents your company, who you are. I'll never forget it. Trench shoring. We had a new procurement guy, and he was like trying to, when you're new, you're trying to make way, in your company. So you're trying to do things. Look, I got a great deal on business cards. It was like handing somebody a piece of notebook paper. And all of us at Trench Shoring were like, not no, but heck no, we're giving anybody that kind of thing. I mean, you put something in somebody's hand as a representation of who you are and what you are. And the first thought in their mind is, wow, this is a cheap piece of nothing. Well, that doesn't work. So unfortunately for me, we can't go 4 hours. So the last thing I'm going to say about that is it represents what you do. Yes, sir.
Right, and work with it. So could that be a self-assumption since type C is the most loose classification of soil? Is it always safe to assume it's class C and then work with it?
So say the first, so I'm sorry, I didn't catch the first part of what you're saying. So repeat the first part.
Some foremen or competent persons, when you ask them what classification of soil is this, maybe you're doing a job site inspection and they say it's type C. And we know type C is the most, yes, worst case scenario. So is it always safe to assume it's type C and then prepare your job based on type C? Would the OSHA inspector still ask you, how did you perform the test to know if it's type C?
I think there are two things here. One, I've had people ask me that question all the time. Why don't we just classify everything as C? That way we don't have to worry about it. Right? Yeah. Yeah, I think what happens to people is that we try to standardize things. Okay, so I don't want people running around having their own ideas about what the soil classification is. I'm an owner. I don't want to manage it. I don't want to deal with it. So we'll just make everything C. Well, in theory, it sounds like that would work fine. Okay. Unfortunately, from what I've seen from my perspective from a trainer is it doesn't work out very well, because while somebody is saying that, now everybody puts it in all their literature and all their things and everything and all their safety standards and everything says we do C and everything C. And then you go out there and I'm looking at spacing for your hydraulic shoulders and it's 8 feet. And I'll ask somebody like, well, I thought it was C. Look, man, it's B soil. I even did a test. It's B soil. I mean, we don't need to spend the money if we don't have to. Or so same thing with sloping. Like we're cutting it at 1-to-1 because why spend all the extra money? So while in theory it sounds like a good idea, I just see in practice what happens is when you get out there and you do have legitimate B soil, which does happen, is that why don't you take advantage of it? Because it is going to be a lot cheaper for you. You're going to move a lot less dirt and your shoring is going to be a lot cheaper. Okay, so and as far as the other part of it goes, I forget the other part. There was another part to your question. Tell me again.
The other part is if an OSHA inspector asks you and you said it's
For C soil.
yeah.
So this is a question I get all the time, and maybe you can help us with it. And I'm looking over here at Derek, so you guys probably can't see him, but you're supposed to test the soil. Well, C soil is worst case scenario. So if somebody just looks at it and says it's C soil, is that good enough? I mean, if they're going to go with C soil, what test are you going to tell them to do? I mean, I can't do a thread test or any kind of test if it's just granular C soil. So if it's C soil, worst case scenario, but you ever have a situation where compliance officers say, well, you have to do a test though? Well, I didn't do a test. It's just C soil. I mean, what test do you need me to do?
That's a great question that hasn't come up in years. So you're testing my memory. There's probably a letter of interpretation on it, is my guess. but I think most of us are pretty common sense. So if you're providing protection as a sea soil, then we're not gonna have an issue. The employees are protected, right?
So I think I agree with what he's saying. In other words, it doesn't really come up where nobody's going to pin your, it has come up, but not with OSHA, and it's come up with the military. I know because I was intimately involved with them, and we had military bases that were saying that. So EM 385 is a kind of a different animal. So US Army Corps of Engineers spec, it's not an OSHA spec that we're shoring to. In that kind of situation, they were pushing people to test even sea soil, and that was something that they were doing, and we kind of pushed back on them a little bit and got them to kind of back off on that, but it was a couple of different bases. But it's a great question because it has come up. All right, I'm gonna have to boogie a little bit. No trained competent person on site, number 2. All right, that kind of is self-explanatory. You have to have people trained, okay, and good training. I just did a thing with trench shoring where I was just showing all of my people at trench shoring. You can go online and get a certificate that says competent person on it for $29, $59, $79. And nothing against these people. I haven't taken their trainings or anything else. I think the point is obvious, okay? Menu-driven courses are great for showing a brand new person what this stuff is all about. Training a competent person, I mean, you just listen to me going to a million different things here, and I've only been standing here for an hour, okay? My class is 8 hours long, 7 to 8 hours long with lunch and stuff, right? And even then I'm thinking of expanding it to a 2-day class. And we do a class here this 3 days at the university. You need to be able to get this kind of an exchange, right? If you're going to do it right. All right. So what's trained and what's not trained? I mean, that's kind of obvious. And the competent person trained is not stick or it's not reflected. So how is the training getting into the field? And I urge you to follow up on that because that's the hardest part. Follow-up is always the hardest part. Everybody knows that you should get this stuff done and people send people to training and we get our certificates and I'm a sub. The general says, I need to see, your certificate. Here's a certificate. Okay, great. And then I get guys like, Warren here who run safety for general contractors or McCarthy. And they say, can you believe I'm dealing with this right now? You can't believe what I'm going through with these guys. Now, we're fortunate. We get to deal with a lot of people like Murray Company, if I can throw that name out there, who've been around for a long time. They'll have issues with people like that. Okay. So here's another thing. The first thing I said to Warren, well, who are you working with? 3-bid, low bid, I get it. We all understand 3-bid, low bid. But I remember having a discussion with a guy from the city of Los Angeles, and he's complaining about why they have all these safety violations on their job from this contractor. And I know who the contractor is. And I say, well, you hired him. You can't hire turtles and expect them to run like rabbits. There's a reason why things cost money. Golly gee, I mean, trench shoring, there's nothing fancy about what we do. But here's the thing, the owners have always said, if we can't pick up something within 48 hours, we buy another truck. You know how much those trucks are? I think they're well over $400,000 each for a boom lift, right? So we got to spend the money to do that because we're after a certain level of service. Not perfect. No way we're perfect. We have our own issues, but that's the level of service that we're after. Some people, they don't care about stuff like that and they don't want to work with us. That's fine. Because we're looking for certain people, not everyone, right? Well, I don't know. It just depends on what kind of work do you want out of your subs. Higher quality subs. I don't know what else to tell you, right? I'm trying to train as people as fast as I can, but I'm here to tell you that there's people who just don't get it, right? And they will at some point if they're going to stick around. All right, so here we go. To end, I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, but successful trench and excavation programs have the following. A top-down understanding of the value and importance of having excavation safety as a real priority. A real priority. A safety pays mentality. The ability to identify how the excavation standard is reflected in the excavation work they're doing. A culture of understanding. I'm already late on it. She's giving up on me. Am I right? It's 2 o'clock. You gonna shut me down? Am I good? Okay. A culture of understanding what excavation standard is on a job and what it means. A well-trained and motivated, competent person who's 100% supported. Huge right here. 100% supported by management. And who reads the standard? Who reads the standard? I say it 3 times. Who reads the standard? Why do I say that? Because I have situations where the people in the field are watched over by an owner, general superintendent, whatever. We train the people in the field, but the guy who's looking over that guy or those guys, he doesn't know the first thing about what we're doing. He doesn't know anything about safety or trench and excavation safety. Have you even read the standard? But you're the guy who's watching to make sure they're doing it. That doesn't work, it seems to be, right? An end-to-end understanding of what compliance means from estimating and bidding all the way through completion. I talked about that, why that's important. Because if the work's bid right, the guys in the field get what they need consistently. Solid communication and respect between the field and the office. There's a field and the office, man. It's like, they're almost like 2 different races of people sometimes, right? White collar, blue collar, call it whatever you want. Bean counters and workers, you know, here's what we always hear out there. The guys in the field, thank goodness you're here. Guys in the office, can't use those guys. Why? Too much money. Guys in the field, they don't even understand where the money goes. I'm here to tell you, and those of you who've been around construction for a long time, you know where the money goes? Time. That's it. How much time? So you look at a construction job, everything you have out there, how much are you spending every minute, every hour, every day? When you have to wait X amount of time for something, you cannot move work forward until you get something or something is taken. That's where we work, okay? We realize how much time that costs. The money you save has not a whole lot to do with $3.15 a day for that short or $3.25 a day or 35 cents a day for that short. I can tell you when I look at bills, and I used to do all this forensic work at trench shoring, they used to call me the cleaner. In fact, the owner was looking at my card and he was saying, what is a forensic? Greg, why do you have forensic anything on your card? Because I was playing around with this whole idea, because I would go in and do all this investigative work, you know, and figure out what was going on with companies. And I'll tell you, when I see the money and where it's going, it's usually freight bills, right? Because that stuff's expensive. And it happens because stuff is going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Because the job site is all in confusion and people are ordering things last minute. And all this extra money is because this stuff is just churning money, right? So think about how you're doing that, how that works. So in the fundamentals, we have a competent person. He understands how to get along with people. That's a big part of it. We're all in this together. Use situations that seem to create conflict to learn and teach from. Do this by being committed to reading what the standard says and being accountable to it. Showing someone something is always better than telling them. Why do I think this is so important? Here's why. If I have a manual, if I have a book, the dynamics of this are amazing. But here's what's going to happen. You and I are talking about something. Instead of me telling you something, I'm going to ask you if you will look at something with me. And when the two of us look at something together, now we're standing here next to each other and we're both looking at something. We're not adversarial. When you're standing across from somebody and you're playing a tennis match, ping pong, whatever you want to call it, it's adversarial. When you take the dynamics and you change them to 2 people looking at something together, you create a whole different scenario. I'm not sure how things are going. You're working with a contractor, whatever. You know, we've talked a lot about this. I was looking at this. Could you come over here and tell me what you think? What do you think about this? When you have people that can think about things like that, everything works so much better. I talked about what is seen, what is heard, what is written. We talked about engineering and how important that is. Tabulated data, the appendices of the standard. The competent nerd knows how to read and apply all this stuff. That's what we do in class. Good training, engaging and interesting, draws people in and makes an impact, creates an opportunity for engagement, builds people up, empowers them, gives them confidence, creates a pathway for success in the mind of those that are trained, and creates a resource to draw from in the future of the job. The standard is taught through real examples by somebody who has more than just book knowledge, but practical experience. opportunities in class to demonstrate what it's learned. These are all things of training. One of the greatest questions somebody asked me one time, we were quoting them and they said, tell me why I should take your class. Wow, I wish everybody would ask me that question, right? Because people just sign up and they send people in. They don't even vet it out. They don't even know. Repeatable system, I talk about McDonald's. You know, McDonald's, I use it all in my training, but the thing of it is we all go to McDonald's at some point. Why do we go? Because they produce the same thing over and over and over. We know what it is. And no matter where we go, it tastes the same. And we can get it in 10 minutes. That's it. Not because it has incredible nutritious food or not because, you know, any of those reasons. So they're a Fortune 100 company because they produce a repeatable result. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get people home at the end of every single day. How are we creating a repeatable result where we can insert people into a system? Paperwork, I talked about, open communication without fear of reprisal. You know, if I go to any one of your job sites and I say, can any one of you stop work? Most everybody will say yes. But then when I get people in a classroom and I get laborers in a classroom, they'll say it's all garbage. Not for everybody, but a lot of companies. Why? How do I know this? Because I train apprentices. So for the AGC, I train laborers. And people will say, yeah, sure, I could say that. I could do that. I might not have a job later, you know, or I might not get promoted. So I guess what I'd say is always make sure that's real, right? Talk about it, promote it. Integrate with the office. I've been saying that a lot. Project management has much to do with safety. A good working coordination between dirt guys and project management is essential. Training inside bidding and estimation people, right? We talked about that. Resources. I'm always surprised at how often I look past the things that are here for free that I never take advantage of. That's a perfect example of who we are, the trench shoring company. I spend a good half an hour in my training helping people understand. And that's why we have reps who come to my training, because most people don't even know that you have that available. A culture of safety, I think we all know what that is. And I've gone way past my time, as always, because I don't think I've ever met a timeline. I'm grateful to you guys for letting me continue here to yammer on, because as you can tell, I'm passionate about what I do. But I guess it's time for questions. If we have any time, maybe that's all gone too. So I don't know. I'll let you guys figure that out. Questions? Everybody's like, no more, please. Okay.
So my question is, what is the best method of soil testing?
Great question. What is the best method of soil testing? Well, I can just give you my best, okay? So the only reason I think I'm qualified to answer this is because when I worked for the military, they actually brought me in, the Navy did, and said, we want to train like 500 people. And here's the deal. We can't pay you. Typical government thing, right? Want everything for nothing, and then yet I got to pay, right? Right? But here's what he said. If you do it, I'll expose you to every single contractor who's working on a base here at Camp Pendleton. They'll have to come to these trainings and you can meet everybody and get cards. Okay, there's some benefit there. And that's how I got on at Camp Pendleton. And I was a fixture there for a long time. Now, what I'll say is, you know, what worked? So we had everybody out there. So we had groups of 5 people. I had maybe 10 groups. I had 50 people at a time. And we went through all these soil tests. So the ones we did were, we did the shear vein, okay, the one they talk about here at the university, which I don't recommend to anybody, sorry. Unless you're a geotech or something, this spring-loaded shear vein thing, I don't know. I'm just not having it, but whatever, we use it and okay. Thread test, the easiest one to do. If I took all 10 people in each group that I had, and I had them do a thread test. So when you take soil from a spoil pile, you mix it with water, and then you're going to roll threads, 1/8 of an inch in diameter, 2 to 3 inches long. By the way, in your video, it's not Derek, so I keep picking on him. But in the OSHA video, it says pencil test. Now, where did they came up with that? Pencil. There's no word pencil in the manual anywhere. Not pencil test. It's called a thread test, okay? So you can roll it out on something flat, and if you can pick it up without it falling apart, then that is good B soil test, and it works every single time. And the really cool thing about it is, you got 10 people, they all come up with the same result. My dad used to call that idiot proof. Call it what you want, it's producing a consistent result. So here's what I do that test, and I use a pocket penetrometer. Pocket penetrometer will be accurate. You take a chunk of material, and then you're gonna take a couple of different samples, but one will confirm the other. And here's a really cool thing. When you actually do it, it changes the way you think about things. It really does. The soil testing, another great one for cemented soils, because you can't do a thread test on cemented soils, is a dry strength test. And I've been using this one in my class, and I've been experimenting it with a lot, but a dry strength test, if you toss a clump of soil on the ground, if it's cohesive B soil, when it hits the ground, the impact will only maybe break it in half or a couple of pieces, and then you can't break it up with your hands. But more often than not, I get in there and I'll have people, this one job site I was telling you about, when I went out and checked the soil for them, they all said it was B soil. I go out here and I said, okay, here's your B soil. You guys all think it's B soil? Yep. So I had a chunk of it and I tossed it out in front of them. When it hit the ground, it went. And they all did this. Oh no. They had to change all their shoring. They had to change their sloping because it was obvious that it wasn't B soil. So that's the power of testing soil. Really, it does work when you work it. Like AA. Worse if you work it. Come rescue me. Okay, because I'll just keep talking. All right.
Hey, just for the record, one typo on your slide, the McDonald's, a good repeatable system in the food industry is In and Out. We'll work with you on that. Even though we don't endorse anything or any products and all that. So,
I agree with that.
yeah, welcome. So, and one other thing too, if we offended OSHA, he is only a contract speaker for us. Right? So we'll be revisiting everything else. So, again, so we have some quick things to get out of the way here for you. I already mentioned the classes that we have here, so I just want to bring that to your attention one more time. We spoke about this, so I won't spend any more time on the slide. I do encourage you to use this QR code that we have up here. Take a picture of that if need be. You can get registered online as well too. Just view the different courses and the different course offerings that we have here. As you see the passion that he has in what he does and how he speaks. That's all of our instructors here. So very, very passionate. A couple takeaways. I'm going to go home and check my wife's B soil in the plants. I don't know if that has anything to do with anything. So nothing is growing and go from there. I'm learning things as we go along. So with that, this is our information here. Please continue to encourage and engage with us. Now brings us to this very important moment that I think all of you have been waiting for. This free OSHA course raffle. So I will turn it over to Giselle and I'll tell you what this raffle is. It's a $775 class, right? So $775 class, any one of our classes that we offer here, right? Food is not included. So I just want to throw that out there, right? Unless the instructor treats you. You do get out of class timely. Throw that out there to you, right? So, but it is a $775 raffle. I'll turn it over to you, Giselle, if you want to run that raffle. And
Yes, so this raffle is for everyone online and in person that are still here. So I have a wheel and you guys all registered and you have a number assigned to you. So that's how we're going to be doing it.
Sorry, Giselle, and just a quick clarification for the course, because I think there's somebody from there's a international attendee. They have to reside in Region 9 to get this course.
not my rules. I took an oath. We got to go by what's there, right? So Region 9. It's non-transferable, right? So if you're like Region 8, you can't transfer it to a friend in Region 9. So many rules. Wow. Like it. That's why we're here, because of rules and regulations and standards that we shouldn't be breaking. For one, yeah, one winner. Yeah, one winner. So how many do we have? We have 160 plus online and then about 40 people in here. So you have a 1 in 215 chance of winning.
Do we
You
have,
win this raffle, go play the lottery.
do we have a Tiffany in person? Tiffany, when?
No Tiffany in person? We have a Tiffany online? You need to be present to win, like online and in, ooh, now that's a good one.
Gotta wait till the end.
Okay,
Oh, it went fast.
I like it. I like it.
What happened to the spinner?
Doing it?
It keeps going, going.
Okay. It's your show, Giselle. It's like the Wheel of Fortune, but no more Pat Sajak. So sad. Is the wheel spinning?
Juan Rodriguez?
Or Juan Rodriguez in person?
Check online.
Juan Rodriguez online?
Nope.
Are you just pulling random names like off your Instagram here, or what are we doing?
I have everyone that registered.
Got it. I mean, these all your friends? I took the oath. We got to do this right. But we'll be here till 3. I live in Torrance, so I'll be home by like 5. We're good. Thank you. Appreciate you. But I want that free class out. Do we have a John Smith? No, just kidding.
Let me check.
Yeah, I think we're gonna start like a
Juan Carrillo, I see you online. You still there?
Juan Carrillo. Are you online? Is Juan Carrillo here? Juan Carrillo, the winner. Is that your hand going up? Thank you, Juan. Okay.
How do you do this?
You're talking. Very good. Can you hear us, Juan?
Yes, sir.
Okay, congratulations on winning the prize. Well done. I have one question I have to ask just for standards. You're not a friend of Giselle, correct? Never mind.
No.
All right. Okay.
Oh, I'm not.
Never mind. All right. So again, this is our information here. Once again, Juan, congratulations for everybody here in person. Thank you for being here. For the folks that are online, thank you for being online. Thank you for your passion in this. Thank you for what you do OSHA wise. And oh, sorry. Let me go here before I go back to the slide. So upcoming OSHA events that we have the Safe and Sound Week 2024, August 12th to the 18th of this year. Here's a QR code. Take a photo of it, take a screenshot of it, and save the date. So Safe and Sound Week is that nationwide event held in August that recognizes the success of workplace safety programs. So we encourage you to either join us or join a program somewhere within Region 9. Right. So, and then without prior to leaving us here, this is our contact information. You're obviously here for a reason. You know how you contacted us. Our phone number here to our offices. Once again, thank you for being here in person. Thank you for being here online. Thank you for your presence here with us. And thank you for what you do and continue to do this very safely in your trench shoring industry. Thank you all.
That's a wrap. Wow, so you got a full dose. So that's me. I told my wife, I said, she's gonna be like, you have no idea what I look like when I go do what I do. Well, I don't know. We keep trying. I train like 3,000 people a year. Yeah. Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure. Thank you. All right. Yep. Better get rid of this. Sure, absolutely. Okay.